Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Good Friday message. I pray that today you may find perhaps some answers to the questions you've been asking about your faith. I'll be talking about how God pursues us and how hope is looking for us. So my prayer is that through this message you may find encouragement, and as we recall the crucifixion of Jesus, we may remember how much we are loved. I want to read for you from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 23, verse 33 through 43. This is the story of Jesus at the crucifixion. When they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there with criminals, one on his right hand and one on his left. One of the criminals who were hanged there kept deriding him and saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed have been condemned justly, for we're getting what we deserve for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." And then this criminal said to Jesus, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus replied to him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." For most of the gospel accounts, we see the attractive side of Jesus, meaning Jesus healing people, protecting the powerless, going after and saving those who are lost, feeding the hungry miraculously. But in very few instances, we find Jesus struggling or in sorrow, in deep pain. But today, we do as we recall the crucifixion. So in this story, in this text, we find Jesus, as we read, among criminals, one on each side. And they were nailed to a cross, each of them. Jesus was rejected. He was betrayed. And he was despised by his enemies and even some of his friends. And that's what led him to be nailed to a cross as well. Now, death by crucifixion represented the most shameful and worst way to die. It wasn't only about the pain inflicted on the body, but it actually was meant to bring a deep sense of shame, because it meant that God or the gods have cursed your life for eternity. And the place called the Skull was a place for that purpose, a place of death. Now, this side, the side of this event is that of a horror movie. Even worse, because if you were there, you could actually smell the rotting flesh. So thick that I believe you could hardly breathe in that time. Now, for Jesus, this moment was like going to a funeral, except that the people coming to the funeral were not family and friends joining to celebrate a loved one's memory and life, as we would do in funerals. No, this was a deathbed among criminals, among enemies for Jesus. Instead of being surrounded by people who loved you, you were surrounded by people who cursed and despised you. And if this was not bad enough, you were not even dead yet. You were attending your funeral, but you were still alive. You were the main attraction, expected to become the last punchline of mocking and humiliation. It is in this context that we find Jesus' last moments. Jesus is weak, he's collapsing, he's tired, and he is miserable. He wasn't only betrayed and rejected, but he's now suffering deep pain in his body, and he is being mocked by those who surround him. So in the eyes of his enemies, really, Jesus did not die a hero, but die a criminal. Jesus was a criminal for all practical purposes. And in the eyes of his friends, he did not die in victory, but in shame and defeat. Even his disciples were wondering, if he was going to do anything about it. So what we see here is that Jesus was struggling with this experience of the crucifixion because of all of the reasons that I said. However, Jesus was not weak, nor was he a victim. He freely, willingly, deliberately took the journey to the cross. He wasn't killed by others. He brought himself to such a occasion because he understood what he was doing and the purpose of his death. So it was not Judas Iscariot's betrayal, or the hate of his enemies, or the power of the Roman Empire, or even Pontius Pilate who brought Jesus to the cross. What brought Jesus to be crucified before them all was his love for them, his love for each one of us. He brought himself to this occasion because of his love for humanity. Now, this is the story that gives all people everlasting hope. This story answers the questions many of us have asked. Does God care about me? Can I be saved? Let me recall what we read. When they came to the place that is called the skull, they crucified Jesus there with criminals, one on his right and one on his left. The answer to the questions I asked, does God care about me? Can I be saved? Is right there among the condemned. Yes, our healing, our love, our grace are found among the criminals. Now let's be clear. Let me explain before I say anything else. These vile men had no good works. They were not good people, and they knew that. They had no high standard of morality. They were wicked men, and they speak to that. There is no way that either could say they had earned God's favor in any possible way. They were thieves, lawbreakers, and they were arrested, tried, and condemned. They knew that. There was no time for good works, getting baptized, becoming a member of the church, or anything like that if salvation was to be attained in such a way. However, this is where it gets really interesting. For one of them, the time he had left was enough to mutter one of the most consequential and profound words or phrases that we read in the gospel. He said this, "Remember me." He had a change of heart. He recognized that Jesus was, in fact, the Messiah. The other criminal was mocking Jesus, saying, "If you are the Messiah, save us all." But this man saw in Jesus what he was, in fact, the Messiah, and that he had the power to help him. And instead of mocking him, he rebuked the other thief and challenged him with these words. He said, "Don't you fear God since you are under the same sentence? We're punished justly, for we're getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." And that's when he asked, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." So this thief felt his guilt, but his faith was greater. His faith was unhesitating, was full, confiding. He was able to see beyond the broken humanity of Jesus and recognize him for who he was, the King, the Messiah. And he didn't ask for a favor or for blessing or even for mercy. In his misery, this thief, he dared not to ask anything but to be remembered. How can any person have such a faith in such a dark and hopeless moment? Yet here we have the poorest of them all, finally understanding in the grimmest hour his need of God's mercy and grace. This was true truly a miracle in the making. Completely unexpected. Finding salvation in the darkest moment of his life. And Jesus heard the cry of this poor soul, and honoring the exercise of his faith, he told him, I tell you the truth, you will be with me in paradise. So the thief asked Jesus to remember him, but Jesus goes further by saying, in essence, you will be with me. You will not only be in my thoughts, but you will be in my presence. You will be home. Jesus took this broken man, this cursed man, a thief that was dying for his crimes. He took him beyond the gates of hell and straight with him to paradise. That is the promise that Jesus gave him. That is how hope found this man. Now, when I see stories like this and I read how Jesus responds to our needs, I can help but ask the question, how effortlessly can divine grace raise the vilest, the rudest, and the worst of us by a simple request to just be remembered? That is grace. This is an amazing moment for all of us. This man found what he had missed his whole life. And you may relate to this story in different ways. You may be looking for blessings, for hope, for grace, for opportunities, for second chances. And here you can see that God is a God that is always willing and available to be with us, to give us life. And this man, he found hope where there was only death, where there was only pain, where there was only despair. He had made choices throughout his life that pushed people he loved away. He had already been abandoned by them. He was by himself, nailed to a cross. He was probably the shame of his family because of the choices he made along the way in his life. Yet, no one had experienced what he did at that moment. Not because of what he did or who he was, but because of who God is. And how he was willing to believe that God was going to be able to listen to his request of being remembered. This is love and this is grace. And this is the gospel of Christ. It is the gift only God can give, one that we can't earn, one that we can't win. Now, after hearing this story, the things that we have talked about, what do you think are the answers to the questions of, does God care about me? Can I be saved? What do you think? I'll tell you what I would say. This man next to Jesus is proof that none of us have to get our lives together for God to accept us as a child. Quite often we think that God will reject us because of our past, because of what we did or who we are today. But we fail to realize that God does not ask us to be ready, just to be willing. That's the story here. And that answers the question, does God care about me? Absolutely. With everything. Can I be saved? Absolutely. If you're struggling with that question, let me tell you right now, God is willing and ready to welcome you today. What does this mean to us? It means that no matter where you are right now in your life, where you're coming from, or what you have done, hope can find you, because hope is looking for you. Even if you find yourself feeling forsaken, abandoned, doubtful, confused, or scared to death, Hope will find you because hope is looking for you. All you need to do is to be willing. Not about being ready, just be willing to welcome God's love and welcome God's grace in your life. And you can say like the thief, remember me, or anything else. You can say, I am here. Or you can say, help me. Or I need you. It doesn't matter. You just have to say what's in your heart. You don't need a long prayer. You don't need to learn anything or memorize anything or recite long prayers by memory. All you need to do is just like the thief did. Say what's in your heart. And you have access to all God's goodness, love, grace, forgiveness, and hope through Jesus Christ. Now this is good news for you, for me, for all people. Today I invite you to trust your life to God. No matter how marred it may be or how lost you may feel, remember that in the darkest moment we can find hope, because hope is looking for us. Hope is looking for you, is looking for your family, is looking for your friends, and God wants to bring goodness to all of you, to all of us together. So I'll leave you with these words. Don't be forgotten. Be remembered.